Buckle up. Another great episode of Fearless. Just around the corner, I'm going to explain to you how the attack on the patriarchy, stick with me, how the attack on the patriarchy explains Caitlin Clark's popularity and Anthony Edwards' obscurity. I may have to tell some of you who Anthony Edwards is, but for those of you that follow basketball, you'll get exactly what I'm saying. Awesome episode of Fearless right now. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me. Do we have a fantastic show planned for you today? Doug Gottlieb is going to join me here in a minute after I start this fire. Steve Kim's going to join us a little later in the show after I've started the fire, and we're going to expand the conversation to some other topics, including Deion Sanders. Boy, do I have a daily dose of Deion for you today. First thing you guys can do, make sure you're checking out the exclusive extra Fearless content on Blaze TV. Go to blazetv.com/fearless. Use the promo code Fearless. Today, Shamika and I will have some extra content for you behind the paywall, for those of you that are subscribers, about Kristi Noem and killing her dog. We're going to get into that. I don't know what side I fall on in that conversation, but we're going to have that conversation, and maybe by the end of it, I will have decided. The other thing I want you to do is thank our good friends at Good Ranchers, because this episode is brought to you by our good friends at Good Ranchers. Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any of their boxes of 100% American meat and seafood. Use my promo code Fearless at goodranchers.com and save 10%. Be good to Good Ranchers because they're good to us. Be good to Blaze TV because they make this all possible. We are under attack, and that's why you got to support blazetv.com. Get a subscription. That's why you got to support our sponsors. So I can continue to do what I'm about to do right now, and that's light a fire that no one else will light because no one else will think to connect these dots the way we connect these dots here at Fearless. So let's get into this fire starter. The NBA has its Caitlin Clark. His name is Anthony Edwards, or Ant-Man. Unlike Caitlin Clark, most of you have likely never heard of him. He plays for the Minnesota Timberwolves, a franchise without much postseason success. 4 years ago, Minnesota selected Edwards with the number 1 overall pick in the draft. I'll be honest, first 2 years of Edwards' professional career, I confused him for Anthony Bennett, the top pick of the 2013 draft, who bombed in Cleveland and was later traded to Minnesota. Whenever I heard Edwards' name, I assumed Bennett had found his footing in the association. I'm not lying here. I spent 2 years thinking he was Anthony Bennett. Obviously, I was wrong. Edwards and Bennett have nothing in common. Edwards is a 6'4" shooting guard. Bennett was a 6'8" power forward who now plays in the Canadian Basketball League. Whatever. Edwards is on the cusp of being the next big thing in basketball. Last night, behind his 40-point explosion, the Timberwolves eliminated Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns with a 4-game sweep, winning Minnesota's first playoff series in 20 years. In fact, it's just the third playoff series victory in the 35-year history of the franchise. Casual basketball fans are about to be introduced to the most exciting and transformational player since Michael Jordan. Yes, I said that. You're about to be introduced to the most exciting and transformational player since Michael Jordan. Yes, I said it and I meant it. Or should I say the most exciting and transformational player since Caitlin Clark? I'm serious. At the moment, the 22-year-old Clark has a much bigger profile than 22-year-old Edwards. How come? Let's think about it. Let's talk about it. Because Clark went through the proper branding and development program. She played 4 years of college basketball. She had 2 long NCAA tournament runs. She connected with the most passionate fans in all of sports, college fans. She started local and blew up nationally. She grew up in the game the old-fashioned way, the superior way, the way things used to develop before social media amplified no-talent frauds. See, I'm old enough. I remember the good old days. Do you? Do you remember like when bands, I'm gonna go music here, like Hootie and the Blowfish would play every little bar in South Carolina and then get signed to a major label? See, I lived in Rock Hill, South Carolina in the early 1990s. Hootie would play at the local college bar, The Money. That's why they became such huge stars. They went through the process. That's what Caitlin Clark has been doing for 4 years, traveling college town to college town, building a passionate fan base. Edwards had a cup of coffee in college basketball. He played 1 year at Georgia and then declared for the NBA. He's been toiling in the relative obscurity for 4 years. Hardcore NBA fans are aware and were aware of his gifts and potential. Casual sports fans are just learning of Edwards. It's why I believe the NBA should pay its 18 to 21-year-old prospects to stay 4 years in college. It's a no-brainer. The one-and-done destruction of men's college basketball has ultimately hurt the relevance of the NBA. Caitlin Clark is a superstar entering the WNBA. She's bringing a massive audience with her. Anthony Edwards is in the beginning process of bringing an audience to the NBA. I'll sound a tiny bit conspiratorial here, but I think the destruction of men's college basketball is by design. Feminists and enemies of the patriarchy do not want young men properly developed. They don't want to create more male icons. If Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, Ja Morant, Zion Williamson played 4 years of college basketball, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese would not be nearly as popular as they are now. Over the past 2 decades, we've paid closer and closer attention to the women's game, primarily because men's college basketball is so weak and the players so transient. More than a decade ago, I started shouting that Brittany Griner and Skylar Diggins were the 2 biggest stars in college basketball. This was back in 2012 and 2013. Griner played for Baylor, Diggins played for Notre Dame. They had more name recognition than any of the men's players. That trend has continued unabated. Men's basketball at the collegiate and professional level is being harmed by the one-and-done rule. The NBA could fix this. It won't, because anything that supports strong men is being destroyed. It's really no different from our border crisis. It's a controlled demolition. Men's basketball is building 7. Controlled demolition, letting everybody in the border, they're tearing down this country and everybody's just ignoring it as they let people just cross the border and infiltrate this country. Again, everything is a controlled demolition. And you're just supposed to say, hey, don't worry about it. We can absorb it, we can take it all. And then things start falling apart and you go, what happened? How did we get here? There's no other explanation. There's no other way to explain a league that benefited from Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, and Isaiah Thomas building huge brands in college basketball, passively watching its relevancy decline as it depends on one-and-done players. The proper formula birthed the rivalry between Magic and Bird. It created the Jordan brand, Air Jordan sneakers, and record TV ratings. The current system can't come close to duplicating the kind of traction and passion of the previous era. Why are they allowing this? Why allow the women to duplicate the superior system? It only makes sense when you realize the anti-patriarchy crowd wants Caitlin Clark to be a bigger deal than Anthony Edwards. I still like Caitlin Clark. I'm fascinated by her story. But in terms of real basketball entertainment, she does not remotely compare to Anthony Edwards. He plays above the rim. He's charismatic. He has an intense passion for the game. He celebrates his teammates. His backstory is fascinating. He's overcome a tough upbringing. He apparently has no connection to his dad. Across social media, people speculate that Michael Jordan is his father. I'm not kidding. It's irresponsible speculation, but on the court and in appearance, he does resemble Air Jordan. All Anthony Edwards needs is a tiny bit of public relations polish. He curses too much in press conferences. That's my only complaint. He drops MFs and other profanities constantly when talking to the media. Later this week, if the Denver Nuggets eliminate the Lakers, Edwards and the T-Wolves will open a 7-game series against Nikola Jokic in Denver. Jokic is the best player in the NBA. He's likely going to win his 3rd MVP trophy in 4 years. A super competitive Nuggets T-Wolves series could launch Ant-Man to stardom. That's my fire starter. I want to buttress my fire starter by playing a couple of clips here. One, I want you all to watch this poster dunk at the end of last night's game and tell me if you don't see a young Michael Jordan here. If this isn't a 22-year-old Michael Jordan. This is incredible. This is at the end of the game.
Edwards! A signature slam!
Kevin Durant made a business decision, a good one. That would have been Durant he was dunking on. Edwards idolizes Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant wants no part of being in that poster, and so he ducked out and made a business decision. The kid hit 7 3-pointers. He had 40 points. He was incredible, and they sweep the Phoenix Suns, who stacked their team. Bradley Beal, Kevin Booker, Kevin Durant. They went all in, mortgaged their entire future. They got no draft picks for for the next 5 years. And they got swept by this kid, Anthony Edwards. And everybody can see what's coming. First, we'll start with just a short clip of Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns, Big Cat, after the game last night. And Cat, 7-foot power forward center that plays alongside him. And to me, what we're seeing with Karl Anthony Towns, he's not Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not saying that. But this combination, Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, is the closest thing we've seen to Shaq and Kobe. And Edwards may be as good as Kobe. He may eventually become as good as Kobe. He's on that path. Karl Anthony Towns, he's never going to be Shaq, but he's really good. But let's listen to these two guys together talk about what's going on with Anthony Edwards.
Anthony, I think before that series, when people were trying to call you a young star, you said you don't want to hear that until you win in the playoffs. Are you able to give yourself a little bit more grace now in that regard?
Not yet, man. Not yet. Yeah, not yet.
He a young star. He over here talking like that shit. He the face of the league. I've been saying that. He hate when I say it, but it's true. Like I said, future's so bright, gotta put the sunglasses on most of the time when I'm walking around with him.
No, it ain't.
Everybody can see it. There again, this is where the kid's the Pied Piper. Karl Anthony Towns is cussing because Anthony Edwards is dropping MFs and all kinds of curse words. But these guys love each other and celebrate each other. It was marvelous watching them post-game and just the camaraderie between those two. But everybody can see, this dude has next. It's not Ja Morant. It's not Zion Williamson. Ja Morant is shooting his way, an idiot his way, and injuring his way out of contention. Zion Williamson's obviously eating his way out of contention for that. It's this guy. He has and in a major way, his personality, he's so charismatic. People love this kid. He's a little bit raw out of his mouth. If they clean that up, I'm telling you, they got something enormous. I want to play Kevin Durant talking about Anthony Edwards after last night's game.
So impressed with Ant. My favorite player to watch. Just grown so much since he came into the league at 22. Just his love for the game just shines bright, and that's something that's one of the reasons why I like him the most, because he just loves basketball. He's grateful to be in this position. He's taking advantage of every opportunity he's gotten. Love everything about Ant, everything, and be watching him going forward. And You know he's going to go out there and play extremely hard every single night, but was really impressed with him. And he's going to be somebody I'm following for the rest of his career.
So I want to go back to my very serious point that I hope didn't go over anybody's head. And this is why I continue to talk about sports. Because there's a way you can see everything that's going on in American society, in American culture, and globally. You can see it through our sports leagues and our sports because they're so important. Live sports is the only way to draw an audience on television and to move popular culture. And the billionaires that own these teams, the elite billionaires that own these teams, again, they're the puppet masters. And so what's going on in the NBA, which has been getting more and more emasculated, and what's going on in the NFL, which is getting more and more emasculated. This is all by design. This is the controlled demolition that I'm talking about. We, men, are being destroyed. And the systems and protocols and processes that made strong men are being undermined and destroyed. And that's how you sit up and go, well, man, Caitlin Clark is a bigger deal than Anthony Edwards. Both of them are 22 years old. Both of them play basketball. How did this happen? And you would think, oh, it's just by accident. It's just coincidence. It's just, the NBA was trying to do this and they got sued and the NBA Players Association and they wanted the players to be able to come straight out of high school or only 1 year of college. This is all by design. No one's forced them into this. This is a controlled demolition of male sports. There was a rite of passage and a protocol and a system. Oh, you do 4 years in college under the control guidance of Bobby Knight, Mike Krzyzewski, Tom Izzo, Dean Smith, Roy Williams, Bill Self. Bill Self, maybe he's in part of this younger generation, but you do 4 years on a college campus, 3 years on a college campus. Magic did 2 years. Judd Heathcote, Larry Bird, I can't remember Indiana State's coach, but he started out at IU and then went to Indiana State. But you go through that development process and they weed out a lot of the rough edges of these kids and polish them up, teach them how to compete, teach them how to prepare. And then you send them off to the NBA with these huge, enormous brands. After 3 years at North Carolina and Michael Jordan entered the NBA along with Hakeem Olajuwon because Hakeem played with the Houston Cougars and had a huge Phi Slamma Jam, a huge brand. Michael Jordan, huge brand. Patrick Ewing, when he would enter. And so it would always be like what we just saw with Caitlin Clark in the WNBA draft. Oh my God, there's a mega superstar coming to our league. And oh my, who's going to get Wayman Tisdale after all he did at Oklahoma? And they've taken that all away with the one and done. They've destroyed men's college basketball because they don't want to properly develop young men. They want to properly develop young women. They're putting women on steroids by destroying men and young boys. This is not hate for Caitlin Clark. It's just an evaluation of what's going on in the culture, and this stuff is intentional. It's not an accident. What's going on at our border? That's not an accident. That's intentional. There's a plan being executed to weaken American culture. And so they've opened the border and they installed a president who would allow this. It's no accident. And what's been done to sports and the emasculation of male sports and all in the safety. Oh, you can't hip drop tackle. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't hit receivers over the middle anymore. You can't. This is all a controlled demolition of the NFL and football. And so they're trying to make it feminize the sport. Oh, we got women coaches now and women executives. This is all intentional. It's the destruction of men and the elevation of women. I want to be clear. I'm not hating on Caitlin Clark. You've been watching this show. I like Caitlin Clark. I'm halfway starting to like Angel Reese. But this is intentional. They destroyed men's college basketball so that women's college basketball could be more relevant and could grow at a quicker pace and would start producing stars. And these processes are never 5-year processes or even 10-year processes. They're generational processes. And so literally in another 20 years, if none of this is fixed, we'll all be sitting around watching the WNBA and less interested in the NBA. Hell, they may, it sounds crazy, but if we dialed the clock back 30 years and said, hey man, in 2024, the women's NCAA basketball tournament is going to draw significantly more viewers than the men's. Oh, that's crazy. No way. Ain't nobody gonna watch women's basketball. 18 million. Whitlock, you crazy. And drawing more than the men, that's crazy. Where are we at now? Did it happen? And again, I'm telling you, in 2012, 13, I was writing about this and saying, are you guys looking at this? Brittany Griner and Skylar Diggins are the two biggest stars in college basketball, men or women. They're the only players we really know. That's what's happening. Men are being destroyed. Anthony Edwards, if he participated in college basketball for 3 or 4 years like he's supposed to, Caitlin Clark is a nice little story. She ain't drawing 18 million people. It's a nice little story. Oh man, look, it's no different. You know what it would be? Cheryl Miller all over again, because Cheryl Miller was a big deal in the 1980s, and we all looked, hey, that's nice. And we paid attention to Cheryl Miller and all that, but Cheryl Miller was never Caitlin Clark. And I know, well, Caitlin Clark's white, and Caitlin Clark plays like Steph Curry, and Cheryl Miller was a big man or a post player, whatever. I get all that. But the reason Caitlin Clark, and look, her race plays a role to some degree in her popularity. But if the men were being properly developed 4 years in college, you could cut her popularity in half. And all that attention would be going towards Anthony Edwards. If you watched last night's game, what you came away with is it's really the first moment where I was like, oh, this is what great basketball looks like. This is what a great player looks like. And it put Caitlin Clark in perspective. Like, if I had been looking at this in college, I would have never been as in love with what I've fallen in love with the past year and a half, 2 years in the women's game with Caitlin Clark. We're being destroyed to elevate women. Call it jealousy, call it me being a hater, call me a sexist pig. I'm trying to tell you what's happening. I'm not telling you not to like Caitlin Clark. I'm telling you they're destroying your male seeds and male leadership through sports. And it's going on throughout the culture. And that's again, you'll never get me to stop talking about sports because you can see everything that's going on in society clear as day. All the problems are there. The puppet masters, go check who owns these teams. The people pulling all the strings in rap music and all these other corrosive things going on in the culture. Same guys that own NBA and NFL franchises. Why is Robert Kraft best friends with Meek Mill? Rap music. There to destroy Christian culture, rap music, there to destroy family structures and a mentality of traditional American values. Who are the puppet masters? It's all the same people. They own football and basketball teams, and they're executing the exact same plan in sports as they are in the rest across the rest of American culture. So enjoy Anthony Edwards belatedly. He's going to be a big deal, but he's not going to be as big a deal as he should be. He should be Caitlin Clark. Instead, he's Ant-Man, and we're about to get a taste of him, and we'll see how big he gets, but over time, there's going to be less and less Ant-Mans and more Caitlin Clarks because that's what the system is supporting. Doug Gottlieb is going to join me. Of course, you guys know Doug Gottlieb. He's a voice on college basketball and just sports, has his own national sports talk radio shows, was a colleague of mine at FS1, played basketball at Oklahoma State, understands the college basketball and NBA universe as well, talks about it better than anyone. He'll be joining us just around the corner. Before I get to Doug, I want to talk to you guys about Cozy Earth. A recent survey found that 7 in 10 parents get an average of 3 hours of sleep a night in their baby's first year. Mothers, you deserve quality sleep, and I know just how you can get it. Cozy Earth. Discover the secret to better sleep with Cozy Earth's luxurious bedding products. And here's an exclusive Mother's Day offer just for our listeners. Use code FEARLESS for 35% off at CozyEarth.com. Cozy Earth bedding products are crafted with temperature-regulating technology, adapting to your body's needs through all phases of motherhood. They use only the very best fabrics, materials, and weaves, offering superior softness that invites you to sink into a world of comfort. Worried about commitment? Cozy Earth stands by the quality and longevity of its products. Enjoy a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty on all purchases. Built to last through the hardest days and the longest nights of motherhood, incorporating Cozy Earth products into your self-care routine can enhance sleep quality and overall wellness. This Mother's Day, treat mom to the luxury she deserves with Cozy Earth bedding and sleepwear and prioritize her self-care and sleep health. Head over to CozyEarth.com and use promo code FEARLESS for 35% off. After placing your order, select podcast in the survey and select Fearless in the drop-down menu that follows. I'll be doing this today. I love the reminder about Mother's Day. My mother has been asking for some Cozy Earth bedding, sheets, and whatnot. They just remind, okay, I got my Mother's Day gift out of the way. Thank you, Cozy Earth. All right, when we come back, Doug Gottlieb's going to join us.
Regrets and our decisions, we all want to go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
Hello, Fearless Army. I'm Jason Whitlock, your leader. I'm going to spend 2024 discussing growth and sacrifice. Hard times are here. Harder times are coming. What has stopped American growth and caused a regression in fundamental freedoms and values? A lack of sacrifice. Our ancestors sacrificed for our benefit. We have not sacrificed to protect the progress they died for. No sacrifice, no freedom. What impedes man's willingness to sacrifice? His ignorance, his perversion, his pride, his ingratitude, and his cowardice. His rejection of God. The Bible is a story about the power and the necessity of sacrifice. Sacrifice is the sun, rain, and fertilizer of growth. Growth is our life purpose. Grow in the knowledge, wisdom, fear, obedience, and reverence to the Most High. Growth requires sacrifice will be our theme for Roll Call 2.0 this summer, June 1, right back here in Nashville. We're excited to welcome you. Let me spend a minute explaining what GROWTH actually stands for us in the Fearless Army. The G is for game plan. In order to properly grow, it's essential we work from the strategic game plan spelled out in the Bible. The R, responsibility. As we grow as men, we understand and accept our responsibilities to God, family, and teammates. The O, ownership. We embrace ownership of our destiny. Outsiders do not determine our fate. The W, wisdom. We honor, value, and share the wisdom imparted to us by elders, coaches, and leaders. The T, trust. We must be worthy of trust. The reliability of a man's word defines him far more than popularity and material possessions. The H, humility. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. That's straight from Proverbs 22:4. Come join us in Nashville as we talk about growth and sacrifice and how without sacrifice there will be no growth. Roll Call 2.0 right here in Nashville, Saturday, June 1st. Welcome back. Time to bring in Doug Gottlieb. Told you guys who he was, and you guys know who he is. He needs no introduction. Doug, I felt like there was a religious experience last night that Anthony Edwards kind of said, okay, guys, I'm next, I'm him. And I hate saying that, but it's the only thing that crossed my mind. That was a big moment last night. That guy announced himself as, nah, I got next. Not Ja Morant, not Zion Williamson, not any of these other guys. It's me.
It's interesting you point that out because I agree with you. And there were two plays, obviously. Everybody's going to talk about the dunk, which was incredibly impressive. But let's not take away that he blocked Devin Booker's dunk as well. And so it's being a two-way player. But this move that you're showing, there's a bunch of breakdowns from Phoenix, which shows you why Phoenix sucked this year, despite the fact they have 3 superstar talents. But yeah, this entire series was the announcement to the rest of the league that Anthony Edwards is in fact the real deal. And if you'd indulge me for 1 second, I'm a basketball nerd, as you know. I love this stuff. And my dad was an AAU coach after losing his job in college, going back to the mid-'80s before AAU was a thing. And so there's an event in Southern California called the Pangos All-American Camp. It's not a camp. They just bring out like the 50 best players and they play. So I was coaching. This is like probably 5 years ago. No, maybe more than that. Probably 7 years ago. I got to think wherever he's back in high school. And I had Johnny Juzang, who started at UCLA, and some other guys. Posh Alexander, who's still in college. I had a bunch of big name players. And about midway through the second half, he did that to Johnny Juzang. And it's available online. If you go on X and you look at it and you watch Anthony Edwards in high school against Johnny Juzang, he dunked on him and you could see Johnny Juzang's soul leave his body, right? And I turned to guys on the bench and I go, who the is that? They're like, that's the Ant-Man. I was like, who? And at the time, he was going to be a junior, and he was the best junior in the country. I'd never seen him before. And he reclassified, meaning he skipped his senior year, went straight to college. But I've seen that before in person. It's more impressive in person than it is. And then you throw in, he's got a great personality. He seems to welcome the moment. Like he knew that was. I have a friend on the Sun staff. He walked into the locker room in Phoenix in Game 3 and told KD to make sure he was taped up right because it was gonna be a long night. Like he's the real deal, Jason, the real deal.
And so you mentioned what I'm fascinated by and what I've opened the show talking about is he's 22 years old. Caitlin Clark is 22 years old. Caitlin Clark is a bigger deal than Anthony Edwards. And last night watching that. Yes, she is.
No. Hold on. You're doing the thing. Dude, she's a huge deal. Okay. And she owned the month of March. And we can get into all of that. And I know you want to. Okay. But we have to be very cautious of using, this is your own words. Don't use Twitter to run your life. Right? Like Anthony Edwards was in a huge movie. He was the breakthrough star in Hustle. Right. And like, look, do I think that Caitlin Clark has crossed over and become a superstar? Yeah, but Anthony Edwards has a pretty big following that I don't think you can track as much. I could be wrong. Okay? I could be wrong. And there's a lot to the Caitlin Clark thing. What?
They're both walking through the airport. Who gets recognized more?
Oh, probably Caitlin Clark.
Stop it, Doug.
Caitlin Clark.
Probably. She's a 6-foot white girl.
Yeah, but he's a 6'5" black dude who walks through an airport, and even if you don't know who he is, you're like, who's he play for? Okay.
That's a difference. But you're not worried. You go, oh, that's that Iowa girl that's going to the Indiana Fever. That's Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
Anthony Edwards, she just made 18 million people watch women's basketball below the rim.
Yes.
And Anthony Edwards can't do that yet because he didn't go through the process that she did. And that's what college basketball is all about. They build brands and superstars and feed the NBA.
Thank you. Well, listen, there's an article people can Google online that Steve Kerr wrote. People forget that before Steve Kerr was a coach, and he was the general manager of the Suns, and then he became a broadcaster, right? But when he was a broadcaster, he wrote, I think it was an op-ed piece, where he said, like, it's not just the players that need time in college. The NBA needs these players to play in college so they can build up their own brand. And it's the thing that we've completely, it's not you, okay? It's not me, although I do think you're being a bigger proponent of players getting compensated more so than I have. Because my feeling has always been name, image, and likeness always existed. Okay? It was when you got done playing everything you did in college, just like as a student, everything you do in college, it helps you with your first and sometimes your second job. And you build a brand for yourself. And we've made that to where it's not important. And the point that you made in your rant is completely accurate. College basketball worked for Caitlin Clark. And one of the big reasons it's not working in the same fashion, although it did for Zion Williamson, helped his brand substantially, is because they're only there for a year. And now even if they stay, they switch schools. So you're like, wait, who, where? So I actually thought, and I said this on my radio show, that her success, as much as it's about women's basketball, it's really more about what a mess men's basketball is and how the NBA and college basketball have never been able to get along, and how many bad actors there are in this business that just want kids to get paid as quickly as possible and not understand the long game, not understand the 40-year plan, which Caitlin Clark, again, she'll never work a day in her life. Whether she's a great WNBA player or an average one, doesn't matter. She is a superstar. She is a megastar. She has crossed over. But I think that a good portion, I don't know what percentage of the pie is, but a portion of her success is really about, in March, we search for stars, people we love, people that they play for a school, they play for the front of their chest. And she's perfect. She checks just about every box. And there's not a men's player that really checked that box outside of maybe Zach Edey. And then Zach Edey falls into he's just a big, giant dude. And as we've shown in the NBA, we like Steph Curry more than we like Jokic. We like guards. We like people who shoot threes. And that because we feel like that can be us.
What do you think of my contention? And I know I'm right on this, but I want your thoughts. If Zion Williamson, Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, if those guys had played 3 or 4 years of college basketball, Caitlin Clark's popularity would be cut probably more than in half. It would have been like, oh, that's nice. Oh, that's kind of fun. And then we would have went back to looking at, but man, Anthony Edwards and these guys, wow. Cut it. If men were doing the right things, and again, it's not about bringing down Caitlin Clark, but they're tearing down men to build up women.
Yes.
And it's just I don't understand why the NBA is doing it or allowing it.
Well, it's the agents, because the agents want guys to get to the NBA as quickly as possible. Because once you're in the NBA, you get closer to that second contract. The second contract is the type of generational wealth that no one else outside the NBA can pay. And Zion Williamson is the perfect example of it, because even though he basically played half a season at Duke, right, he was a thing. All this buzz you see around Caitlin Clark, like we had that with Zion Williamson, only it was short-lived because he lost early in the tournament, and then he got hurt in the Carolina game. And even without that, right, he was a YouTube sensation, and then he got his own shoe, and he just hasn't been able to handle his business, take care of his body until this year, and still kind of let him down. So, yeah, of course I would agree with you. I will also tell you that the women's game is trending more the way of the men's game, And I think there's a pretty good shot that outside of Paige Beckers, like, I'm not sure we will have this again. We will have this again where we have a woman stay at the same school
Have you
for
watched
4 years.
Juju?
Juju's amazing, but she has to stay 3 years, right?
Yeah.
She's in California. They are drawing well. Okay. Lindsay does an amazing job. No, we're not. She's not my sister. But we're related by not having the same parents at all. It's a joke. Like, she's with a coach that's coached in the NBA. Lindsay's big time. I think they'll win there. But she's on the West Coast. She's at USC. Basketball doesn't matter until January or February. It's just not the Midwest. Like, the Midwest thing really, really worked in Caitlin's favor. So do I think it could? Yeah. But the likelihood is that we're seeing more and more transfers. We're seeing NIL poach players here to here to here. And I think the men's game is probably 2 years from turning it around, because next year there's one more COVID year. And then after that, now you're going to get a lot of these players staying in college instead of going pro, because they're making more money in college than they would because they're not really NBA players. So I do think this will even out. But the problem is, I don't know if somebody will stay 4 years at a Midwestern school, put up those type of numbers, have that type of following. Like, it really is a once in a generation story. And I think it's helped out substantially by a myriad of factors, most of which you've discussed on your show.
So if you're the NBA, why not pay players to stay in college? Well, seriously, they blow money on everything else. Pay them to stay in college
So they did away with the Ignite. I don't know if you saw that. Okay, the Ignite was a money loser. So, and they said, hey, we're doing away with the Ignite because now players have a chance to make money in college. It's fine. I'm with you. And I think, look, all it takes is opening up of the doors. I don't know if the rule still exists. When I was in college, you were allowed to work out with NBA teams in the summer as long as you paid your own bill. So I did with the Trailblazers one summer. It was awesome. And I'm with you. Like, hockey actually has that too. If somebody owns your rights, you can go in the off season, I believe, and work with the hockey people, and they still own your rights when you. So all that comes down to negotiation. The problem is that the CBA has already been signed, and it's a long CBA, so I don't see that being changed. But you're right. Look, college is important, and now that you can make money in college, you run out of kind of all the other excuses, if you will. And March Madness, all those eyeballs, it builds up a brand. And now players are learning to build their own brand when they're in college anyway. So what you're saying is completely accurate. But again, you have so many of these bad actors and people who just go, no, you got to get the league. And then people, they all think, well, if you don't go to the league, you go to the G League, you get a two-way, you get called up. It's just not that easy. But that doesn't stop the perception. The money in college is big right now, gigantic. I know of a center who went from a West Coast school to a Big Ten school. They got $1.2 million reportedly in NIL. And it's $120,000 a month on a 10-month contract. That's real money. So with that money existing, I think it will keep players in college. The big issue, though, and everybody says the transfer portal, it's not the transfer portal, but now you don't have to sit out a year. And they just passed a rule where basically you're a free agent every year. And it's a disaster because what the NFL figured out a long time ago, and you figured out with women's college basketball, is we want to turn on TV and know who we're watching. Okay? How many people watching your show can name the head coaches at North Carolina, Duke, Kentucky, and Indiana, and even UCLA? How many? I would bet that less than 25% can name all of them. And you could never say that 20 years ago, ever say that 20 years ago. So the coaches don't bring people because they've all retired or moved on. And then the players, we get to know them for 1 year. Now, I will point out there's a guy.
Let me try to answer that question.
Go ahead.
I want to try to answer that question. Mike Woodson's the coach at Indiana.
Got it.
Mark Pope just got named coach at Kentucky.
Yep.
Hubert Davis is the coach at North Carolina. And I think the Duke coach, his last name is Shire. Did he play there?
Okay, that's
John?
really
Is
good.
it-
John Shire.
Yeah, but that
John Shire.
yeah that was tough. And I'm the Duke guy
Way
was tough.
harder than you
And
ever
if
would have thought.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
But who's the UCLA coach?
I can't even think. Oh,
Who's
UCLA coach?
Yeah.
No, last one I remember is Steve Alford, and that's
Okay,
been
so
several years ago.
Mick Cronin. Mick Cronin.
Mick Cronin, yeah. And he used to be at Xavier or Dayton or Cincinnati? Somewhere in Ohio.
He used to be at Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So
Let me move you on back to Ant though, and let's
Okay.
talk about his NBA deal. I'm trying to think of who his competitors are for who's got next. Is it the Shea kid in Oklahoma City, Ja Morant, who to me has eliminated himself, Zion Williams? I mean, who?
Luka.
And you got Luka, and
probably Luka, but Luka and because Luka's got, like him, great personality, dominates the ball, won in Europe, but he's not American born, and
yeah,
his spectacular is also much more about skill and size than it is about just raw athleticism and aggression. So I would say those are really the two. And it's interesting that you brought this up because it's a real thing. We all lived through the post-Jordan era, right? And people tried to anoint Tracy McGrady. He couldn't win, right? People tried to anoint Penny Hardaway. Grant Hill got hurt all the time. Allen Iverson, he just couldn't. I don't think he could keep his personal life straight, right? He just was too hot, too cold. Carmelo Anthony just, scored a bunch but couldn't win big. And so we went through.
If Kobe didn't have the rape allegations, it probably would have been Kobe.
Maybe, but Kobe, we remember Kobe now. Kobe for a long time was was unlikable. Like he went through the different, right, where he was trying to figure himself out. He tried to be a rapper for a while. He tried to be street, tried to be hood. Then he tried to be Mr. like hardcore. And by the end, he kind of figured out he was kind of a real dude. And he evolved into a really thoughtful, interesting person who everybody tries to emulate today. But that wasn't Kobe for most of his career. He was super selfish early on. He wanted to be Michael Jordan. Talk like him, walk like him. He patterned everything after Michael Jordan. And probably because he was with Shaq, he never got the credit early on that he deserved. And I thought that kind of built up some angst within his personality. But the other people, look, most in the NBA think Luka is that dude, right? That he's the guy who can, but I don't think that roster, really, really works. Not that Anthony Edwards playing in Minneapolis is a traditional landing spot for a star. But I think the movie, let's see how long this run ends. I think just you have to have one of those highlights like the highlight dunk. Even though you and I, we like real sports. Remember, we're talking about the mainstream fan. That one is a holy cow sort of dunk. Plus it's on Kevin Durant, kind of a visual passing of the torch a little bit. And so, yeah, it's going to come down to, if you want to carry that crown, go win. And that was a first really, really, really big step for the league. Shea's got a possibility. And even though Shea's Canadian, he's got a good personality, but I don't think he's not the jaw jumping athlete. He's not the great 3-point shooter. He's really, really good. And I think also Oklahoma City, it's a likable group, but I don't know if he can break out unless he starts to average 35, 37 a game or something like that. And I think he's got the talent to do it. He's got to develop his 3-point shot a little more.
So, and again, it's not like I followed the Timberwolves all year, because I didn't. I'm not going to sit here and lie. I don't follow the NBA that closely. It's this time of the year I pay attention. But their roster, to me, is championship ready this year. With Cat and Rudy Gobert, man, they can, and Edwards, they can defend the rim. And with
here's what people miss, Jason. Here's what people missed. Okay, they missed that the league changed. The league was trying to catch up to the Warriors for a long time, and the league really caught the Warriors. And Kevin Durant was such a cheat code back then that it didn't matter. They should have won 3 in a row. If everybody didn't get hurt, they win 3. Okay, But now the league's trying to catch up to Denver. And so when they traded for Rudy Gobert, people are like, what are you doing trading for Rudy Gobert? You can't win with Rudy Gobert. But guess what? You can't beat Denver unless you got two big guys to match up with Jokic. He's that good. Okay, he's that good. And it doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the reality is Denver's the best team. Minneapolis is in chase. And they have superstar. They went out and got a veteran point guard in Mike Conley, who just knows who he is, knows what to do, gets everybody, doesn't have to play the whole game and doesn't care. They have enough ancillary talent. They've been together for 2 years now, so they have some cohesion. But when they made the Rudy Gobert trade, that was really, really forward thinking. They knew who the best team was, and they were ready to take them down. And the rest of the league is trying to catch up to now you got to be big. Because remember, again, if you look at Denver, it's not just about Jokic. Aaron Gordon's 6'10", 6'9", maybe, right? Michael Porter Jr. 6'9". They go 6'9", 6'10", 7 foot across the front line. You got to have size and versatility to compete with them. And I do think Minnesota has that. Nobody pays attention to the regular season. That's why we had to see it for real against Phoenix. And Phoenix's whole thing is we're going to go small. Well, they destroyed Phoenix when Phoenix went small. Didn't matter. And I think it's a great sign for the possibility of them making a long run here in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm a prisoner of the moment. I think they can win it all. My only complaint about Anthony Edwards, because I do think he's got a great personality, and this is another thing that I think if he had gone to college for 3 or 4 years, it would have been cleaned up. He curses too much in press conferences and with the media. Drops MFs, drops F words. I think that's the only thing I would complain about is can they clean up his language? I think that's going to be a tiny bit off-putting.
You clutching your pearls there, Jason? That doesn't seem like you, but
I
understand. You're not talking about you. You're talking about mainstream America, right? And getting to know a guy. And that's where,
and I don't curse nearly as much as I used to anymore.
No. Yes, I think we all kind of
mainstream, yeah.
Most of us evolve out of it. Plus, you're driving to Nashville. You're not driving to LA, which makes you curse a whole lot more, right? So I hear you. I think a little bit of that, in all honesty, is the kind of Kobe effect. If you remember, Kobe used to do that kind of for attention in his career, where he'd drop an F-bomb during an interview, and you're like, can you do that? Like, well, I guess Kobe can. So a lot of guys emulate that. Instead of, like, Michael Jordan never cursed. He just didn't. He cursed plenty, just not when there's a hot mic in front of him. So I'm with you. I think the Caitlin Clark thing's fascinating. I'm really intrigued to see what happens this summer, because the reality is that we're not going to hear from her or see her for a month. They're starting their season, middle of May, which is right in peak NBA season. And it's a really hard juxtaposition. You can tell me you're the biggest Caitlin Clark fan when you're watching high-level NBA, and then you flip over and you watch WNBA, and you're like, oof. That's not an easy watch. And then she's not going to be the best player. Probably not the best player on her own team. And the WNBA is interrupted by the Olympics, and she'll probably be on that team, but we've never really cared about the women's national team, have we? And that cuts so I'm interested if there can be carryover momentum. It clearly became a thing. I watched. I was at a bar in Orange County. And I sat down when they were playing LSU, and I was with a group of people, and I'm like, hey, can you throw on the game? They're like, what game? It's like the women's game. And I got all my friends like, really? Like, yeah, Caitlin Clark, dude, she's a thing. So everybody in sports was in on the thing. The question is this Linsanity? Okay. Is this Kaepernicking? Or does this have a life after this? And in years to come. And that I don't really know the answer. My guess is that there's a bit of a window here, and women's basketball is going to see a substantial drop-off because they're going to act like, okay, next year let's put it in domes, next year let's blow it up. And there just isn't the support for that nationally. There's just too many bad teams, frankly. But I'm willing to see what happens, because it definitely was a thing that took the sports world by storm.
I agree with you, and just to be clear with the audience, when he's talking about the NCAA tournament next year, trying to go to domes, and they're talking about not giving these teams home games in the first two games. I think that's all silly and stupid. They're high right now on this Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese high, and that's going to blow up in their face. Where I will disagree with you, though, I think the Caitlin Clark thing is going to actually be helped by the Olympics. That will end up caring about the women's Olympics team far more than the men's Olympic team, particularly if somehow they can keep. Have they already named the women's team? To me, you got to keep Brittany Griner and some of these other dudes off that team. If they're all tatted up, they got to do what they did at the WNBA draft. I mean, that was such a remarkable presentation of femininity that people could find, they could embrace. They all dress like women. You throw Brittany Griner out there all tatted up.
Well, I do think, look, we talked about this on the radio show. I know you talk about it on your show. And that's why we watch it and we respect it, is because the reality is that I don't think her sexual preference is the number one reason people like watching her. But there's a portion of people that never watched women's basketball because they thought, hey, it's all a different sexual preference than mine. It's not really for me. And that's really what the league has been perceived as for its 25 years of existence, right? That it's a complete lesbian culture, and that's their game. And I think that's as much
drag queen basketball. It's drag king basketball. It's women dressed up as men playing basketball. I don't want to see it. And so that's why I love I got to give Angel Reese the credit, and she's over the top and she goes too far, but she's brought out a feminine energy and, hey, let's try to look like women while we're out here. I find that far more enjoyable to watch. I don't want to see women impersonating men. I want to see women doing the best women can do.
Well, I mean, and I think she's leaning into that. I wish she would lean into being the bad girl more, going forward to the WNBA to have this magic bird thing. Because all of those were factors into the rise of the NBA, right? White, black, and they were rivals. They became friends, but as competitors, they hated each other when they played against each other, right? That changed the sport forever. And, look, I saw your piece, and I had something similar where you talked about, hey, you can't go from being the villain to all of a sudden claiming to be a victim when you created this entire narrative. So did LSU basketball. Like it really landed poorly on most of America. I just think continue being that person, right? And so I'm with you. So I do think that sexual preference, she literally looks like the girl next door. She plays like Steph Curry. I think people love that, right? They love kind of a freewheeling, shooting threes, throwing crazy passes sort of style. It's the Pistol Pete Maravich of it. She was at one place for 4 years. She was in the Midwest, where people in the Midwest think all their values are constantly being attacked. And here's a woman who represents our values. Like all of those things worked. I'm interested in the Olympic thing, because here's the other thing. There's no guarantee the men win. And I know it's a way more competitive landscape with the men than it is the women. But to help your point, if she plays and plays well and they win and somehow the men don't win, not good for the men's game, great for the women's game. But the WNBA is doing something where, they've acquiesced to the private planes. They've acquiesced to some of this other stuff. Let's just see, right? Because I was in high school in '93 and Wayne Gretzky came to LA and everybody watched hockey for a year. And then we flip on hockey, like, I don't know anything about hockey. I'm out, right? NASCAR expanded. Okay. And then NASCAR is good. It's still solid. It's fine. It's still there. Right. Hockey contracted some. They're still trying to figure out what to do with this. I think the Phoenix team just moved to Utah. Right. We've seen this in so many different sports, especially the niche sports. Right. The X Games were a thing. You and I were at ESPN. The X Games are everything. Has anybody thought about the X Games ever recently?
Wow.
Never.
Wow.
Right.
This is good.
So we've had things where this is the next thing. I mean, hell, soccer for our entire lives has been the sport of the future, right? And Messi is gigantic. But can anybody name any of the other players in the MLS? No, of course not. So I'm not here to rain on anybody's parade. You get to our age, you do this job for a long time, and you have to have the balance and the context to say, hey, like, this is great. It's cool. Young women hey, I can be a normal girl and go out in my driveway and shoot and hoop, become a college player. Now you can make money being a women's college basketball player. Could never say that previously. She has her own shoe, just like Sabrina has her own shoe. Like, these things are great, but like, don't get it twisted. There's a lot of other factors that were working in her favor, and we'll see how long this thing lasts. But we'll see.
Thank you, Doug. Great job. Loved
Thanks,
it.
Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's Doug Gottlieb. Guys, I want to talk to you about our good friends at Good Ranchers. Tired of your favorite cut of beef or chicken costing more and weighing less every time you buy it? I've got a sizzling solution for you. Good Ranchers Price Lock Guarantee. This is the only price lock on 100% American meat you can find, and you don't want to miss it. During their April Price Shield campaign, Good Ranchers is locking in your price until 2026 when you subscribe to any one of their boxes full of 100% American meat and seafood that they ship right to your door. Good Ranchers is where I get 100% American meat I can trust that's tender and full of flavor every time. With meat prices continuing to go up and quality at the store going down, Good Ranchers Price Shield will not only save you hundreds, but also help you put 100% American beef, chicken, pork, and wild-caught seafood on your plates that you can trust. Plus, get an extra 10% off your subscription with my promo code FEARLESS at goodranchers.com today. What I really love about Good Ranchers is their commitment to their transparency. They believe that you have the right to know exactly what's in your food. They're amazing supporters of this show. So go and support them and take the mystery out of all the meat you buy. This exclusive Price Shield offer ends the month of April. So if you want to secure your best price on meat until 2026, go to goodranchers.com right now today and use my promo code FEARLESS for 10% off your subscription, free express shipping, and a price lock guarantee until 2026. Goodranchers.com. American meat delivered. Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell, next. But now he sent out this Adam Sosnick. I mean, he sent out this guy definitely rode the short bus.
Have you seen my baseball?
I mean, this is an unarmed man in a battle of wits with me.
Sorry.
I'm reluctant to even push back against this Adam Sosnick because I feel sorry for him. He's so intellectually limited.
I'm as stupid as a stupid does.
Plant Trick, Bet David, I know you don't want to apologize to me, but you owe Adam Sosnick an apology.
Never send a boy to do a man's job.
This guy puts out this hour-long video on Valuetainment or on his channel on Valuetainment, and this dude got trashed. Everybody can see through what Adam Sosnick was doing.
Oh, you're a villain, all right. Just not a super one.
Welcome back to Beef. As I walk you through my top 50 media beefs of all time. Yeah, I'm an equal opportunity beefer. It's like, Randy, are you asleep at the wheel? Big lips are in style. I'd love to squash this beef. I mean, I was not real happy at all. I was less than thrilled. I was displeased. And now we have beef.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Korean Cosell. Steve, I got a great topic for us. Stephen A. Smith in more hot water. Oh, hold on, before I get going. Steve, I think you're going to regret this letting your hair go natural decision. I think I just don't know if you're going to like it. I don't know how the audience is going to respond to it. You know,
Hold on.
The Just for Men Steve was very popular.
It was, but you know what? Sometimes you got to let it grow natural. Right now, I am in my Al Davis phase, silver and black. It's going to take a little bit of time. I know we're all adjusting together, but you know what they say? If I went black, I could still go back. Don't worry about it. If it doesn't work out, I can go back to being Jet Black Lee. So let's just give this till the end of June. Stick with me here, guys. I know the mop looks a little funny. I might even, you know what? I might even really go into my Crouching Tiger roots. Jason, I might even go full Rice Bowl. We don't know where this is going. It's going to be a wild ride. Hold on, folks. It's a roller coaster. It's a roller coaster. Hold on.
All right, well, we have that to look forward to. Looking at you is a reminder that I need to dye my hair. Hopefully I'll do it tonight. I'll remember. But Stephen A. Smith, Steve, is in hot water again, according to some. Steven Jackson and Jalen Rose attacking him because Stephen A. Smith snitched on Russell Westbrook. Let's watch Stephen A. talking at halftime. Russell Westbrook was in some sort of dust-up, I think, with Luka Doncic. And anyway, let's listen to Stephen A. Smith.
What did you see from Russell Westbrook?
Inexcusable behavior. That's what I saw. And I don't know why this isn't being talked about enough, to be quite honest with you. I was of the mindset that Russell Westbrook deserved to be suspended for today's game. That's how appalling his game was. Now, I've been raving about Russell Westbrook since he arrived in Los Angeles. He's been a godsend for the Clippers as far as I'm concerned. He's an Energizer Bunny. But what he did the last game, I want y'all to go back and reflect on what transpired in game 3. Look at this foul right here. You knock the guy clear upside the head. You sit up there and you come down on Luka Doncic in the back. That play right there, you could have separated his shoulder. Then you push him in the chest. Then you go after PJ. And then after that, even though PJ shoved you in the back, and then you're shrugging off the referee. I felt so serious about this, fellas. I called the league office, and I said, I need an explanation. Tell me why Russell Westbrook wasn't suspended. And I was told that the officials gave their report, and every indication in writing that they provided said, we handled this. He got a couple of technicals, plus a flagrant one, plus he was ejected, plus no one was injured. So we took all of those things into consideration. That's why we didn't suspend him. And I stood down. I said, that makes total sense. I'm glad. But they said, if it had been the regular season, the likelihood is that they might have had a different decision. But it's the playoffs, and because of how important it is, you can't just do that. But Russell Westbrook, mad love and respect to him most times. I was so disappointed in the way that he played the other day. Kawhi Leonard is hurt. Paul George and him combined for 16 points. They're averaging 29 points per game together. You're needed, and you acting like that? I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
So people are calling that snitching, him calling the league. How come he wasn't suspended? Let me read. Do we have the Jalen Rose tweet? I wanted to read that first, I think, and then I'll go back. Yeah, Jalen Rose subtweeting Stephen A. Smith. Since day one, I'm so grateful that I chose to put on for my culture, ride or die, versus being a media coon. It doesn't pay as much or always get historic views, but living in and having my hometown on my driver's license is undefeated, blessed. So he's somewhat saying, yeah, I don't work at ESPN anymore. I don't make what Stephen A. did, but I'm at home and blah, blah, blah. God, that's Jalen Rose going after Stephen A. Smith. Now, I think there's some tweets or Instagram posts from Steven Jackson. Let me read a couple of those. I think this is Steven Jackson. I said it, and no, that's Stephen A. Smith. My bad. I want to play the Steven Jackson clip, the SOT of Steven Jackson going after Stephen A. Smith.
You don't even work for the NBA. Then you gonna call them and ask why somebody is suspended. So that got me thinking, like all the shit you said about me when we was in the brawl, that you volunteer say I should be suspended for, like, it's crazy, bro. That has nothing to do with you. We allowed to disagree, and as players, we don't understand that type of shit. Like you are a reporter on sports. You talk about sports. What make you think you got the power to call the league and see why I'm not suspended? Your job is to talk about the game. That shit was just weak to me. You know what I'm saying? I got respect for him, so I don't want to demean him, but that's just some clown shit. That's some Whitlock type shit. You go on there and say you want to know why the man wasn't suspended. That's crazy. and whoever agree with him is whack. But listen, bro, I ain't got no problems with nobody, but I ain't no yes man. And if I disagree with something, I'm gonna disagree with it. I'm gonna say it to you. I don't give a how you feel about it. I ain't gotta disagree with you long as I ain't disrespecting you. And that shit was whack. And whoever disagree with him doing that shit was whack. Ain't got nothing to do with playing basketball. Your job is to commentate and talk about the game. You know what I'm saying? You in shit lock, man. Y'all some weird shit, bro. Some weird shit.
Wow.
I don't know how I got dragged into this,
Yeah.
but I did. Whitlock, and then I'm SHIT lock. I don't remember doing anything like this in my career, what Stephen A. did, but I don't even know if I have a problem with what Stephen A. Smith did. He just unpacked it over the top in an exaggerated way that made it seem like he did something unfair. I'm not sure if that's the actual case, but your thoughts?
Well, a couple things. Number one, about Jalen Rose, and I know he does a school, so he's actually put down roots in a community and doing real work. But really, so that's for the culture. So like Stephen A. Smith calling the NBA league office and wondering why a player is suspended goes against the culture. Okay, again, warp priorities. That to me is just an amazing statement that somehow that what Stephen A. Smith did was against the culture. Just think about that. Also, I have a question for Mr. Steven Jackson. Okay, but what if Stephen A. Smith would have checked in with Jackson and asked if it was okay? Isn't checking in a big thing with them? Isn't that all about the credibility that they love? But I will say this. That was a little bit of Karen A. Smith. That was a little Karen A. Smith there. It's one thing to get an explanation on a ruling, because I've had to do that with boxing commissions about certain controversies that have cropped up in the sport. But yeah, I do wonder, was Stephen looking to advocate for a suspension, or was he just merely looking for an explanation as to why Westbrook was not suspended? I do think there is a difference. But here's the other thing. How many times has Stephen A. Smith called the league office and asked about Draymond Green? I mean, let's be honest about it. As chippy as Westbrook was for that one game, we have a whole history with Draymond Green. Did he ever call the league office wondering why this guy's not been suspended more than he has been in the past? It is interesting, but again, it's clear Karen A. Smith did not stay on code.
If he had done it, if he had delivered this message without all the bluster and over the top, if he had just said, you know, I found this interesting, I called the league to get their understanding of the penalties they leveled against him, no one would have batted an eye, but he presented it as if, I called because they should have suspended Russell Westbrook,
right,
and I wanted to know why they didn't. Now, even, you know, he tried to cover it up, but how much he liked Russell Westbrook and all that other stuff, but it does sound like, hey, man, you snitching. You trying to make more of this than what the league is. You know, leave the reporters, because, again, normally a pundit or whatever, a reporter would call and ask for that clarification, and he could have presented it like we at ESPN, but he wanted to smoke. Now he's got it. Steve,
Jason,
I don't understand. Why am I involved?
Well,
what do I have to do with it?
You know why. I mean, you live rent-free in these guys' head. But here's the other thing. But let's say Stephen A. Smith would have just merely said, in my opinion, if I was the commissioner and I was the NBA league office, I would have suspended him. Okay, so that's his opinion. And he never would have called the league office or did what he did. I wonder, did Jalen and Steven Jackson then have a problem with the opinion? Because I've seen this before where somebody gives a dissenting opinion, and then that even is against the code that is so precious.
You're nailing it. I want to move on to another ESPN superstar, Pat McAfee. He's in a little bit of hot water, getting a little blowback, or
Really?
well, I wouldn't say blowback, because everyone kind of tiptoes around Pat McAfee. That they're all afraid to, you know, they don't want to get crossways with the McAfee hive. But he was tipping NFL draft picks. You know, the NFL would prefer that their partners not blow or tell the audience who's getting drafted before it's announced. to the audience and the live on TV or whatever. McAfee would not follow those rules and kind of mocked. And anyway, people have been talking about this. Let's play the clip. Let's watch McAfee and company mock tipping draft picks.
Yeah. The Dolphins pick is in. We know what it is. We're not allowed to say it.
No.
We're not allowed to say it.
No.
Well, there's been a little bit of ruffled feathers, I guess.
Who's mad?
Wow.
What, the brass came down?
No,
well, what'd you have for dinner last night? Did you have steak? Did you have chicken? Did you have a pork chop maybe? What was the one that you had?
Yeah. What are you talking about?
Well, just
He loves
going
pork
through
chops, I thought.
Yeah, I'm a big pork chop guy, so I wasn't sure if that.
Well, I'm an end guy, my brother. I like the end of the pork chop.
Okay.
End.
Connor, I had a pork chop. I think Mr. Robinson was the guy that served it to us.
Oh, is that right? Oh, this is you, Mrs. Robinson.
In the trenches. Who does in the trenches?
So,
Albie?
You're talking about, Penn State's AQ.
Chop Robinson.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh. Whoa,
what,
no.
Bill?
Don't you dare.
What'd you say, Bill?
I was guessing.
Bill, don't get us kicked out of the ground. Jeez Louise. They're going to send the NFL security right over here and kick us off the ground.
Talking about Chop Robinson, defensive player for Penn State. Is Pat McAfee above the law?
He just may not care, but what do you think they were getting into, both parties? I mean, Pat McAfee had to understand what he was getting into in terms of the corporate structure of Disney. But then those decision makers in Bristol had to understand what you were signing on for with the Pat McAfee experience. Now, Jason, it's interesting about this broadcast. I ended up watching a lot of it. I had two screens on. I had my television and then I had my laptop. I didn't even know McAfee was doing a show. And I saw something on Twitter where Bill Belichick, who I thought was outstanding, he was really good, by the way, very personable, very funny, very insightful. He gave a breakdown of Drake May, and I said, you know what? I want to see more of that. So you had to go to ESPN Plus. I don't know what the big deal is in this sense, Jason. That was not the main broadcast. There's basically two of them. There's ESPN and NFL Network, which basically for years I've either switched around depending on the commercial schedule. And I wanted to hear what Bill Belichick said. So I stayed on that particular telecast for about 20 picks. My view is this. We have a choice. If you don't want to be tipped off to the very end, just don't go to ESPN Plus. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal either. I didn't watch the McAfee deal. I wasn't following it too close online. I was watching the draft mostly on TV, and so I didn't even know people were tipping picks online. But they're paying you all that money. This is one thing, Steve, when people start paying you, you're the highest paid employee at ESPN, they want you to be on the same team as management. It's like you pay a franchise quarterback. Andy Reid wants Patrick Mahomes to be on the same page with him and basically be a part of, the management team or reflecting the management's view. They're not going to get that from Pat McAfee. They should have known that his brand is to not be that guy, and so he has no interest in being that guy. But to you, I think this is probably a little bit overblown and good for them. I want to move on to Deion Sanders. I found this interesting that even my man, Pro Football Talk, Mike Florio, kind of went after a little bit Deion and ESPN. ESPN published a story about, Deion, after the spring game, says he's not going to go to the NFL. He's not going to follow his sons to the NFL. And then there was also the story about their spring game last year, 48,000 people attended. This year, they're announcing a crowd of 27,000. I believe that's last year's deal.
Yeah.
And then I want to show you this picture of this year's deal where they're saying 27,000 people attended. That does not look like 27,000 people to me. That looks like 12 to 15,000. I know the weather was bad. It wasn't ideal conditions, but to me, that looks like, oh, the shine is off Deion Sanders. That hype bubble, hype machine has burst. They had Lil Wayne in for a little concert, I think, the day before the spring game, or maybe it was after the spring game. But anyway, your thought. My take is Colorado's ready to wash their hands of Deion. He's like fish that's gone bad. He's like company that's gone bad. It's great for 2 or 3 days. Now it's time to go. The excitement around Colorado football just isn't there anymore. Your thoughts?
Jason, I didn't even realize that they had their spring game this weekend till you brought it up during the rundown. And I remember last year's game, I actually watched. It was nationally televised on ESPN. It was actually a very big deal. They actually devoted, I think, a 2.5-hour block on a Saturday afternoon. But yeah, Jason, I don't think there's any doubt that there's a little bit more of a wait-and-see attitude from the people at Boulder and anyone associated with Colorado football, given how last year played out towards the last 8-9 weeks after they dominated September in terms of the news cycle. But here's my view. If you're a Colorado Buffalo fan, how in the world can you say to yourself, we're building a program with a lot of structure that is built for the long haul, and how does it not enter in the back of your mind that when our quarterback and the safety and Travis Hunter leave, that the coach may be right out the door with him? And look, to be fair, the Buffaloes have done some pretty good stuff replacing the Louis with new Louis. Okay, so it's been Louis in, Louis out. We don't know what it's going to look like. It seems like cosmetically that they have upgraded certain positions, namely the offensive line, as they go into the Big 12. But Jason, I don't think there's any doubt about it. There has to be this uneasy feeling in that part of the world, in Colorado, that, wait a minute, is this guy just using us as a platform for himself and a few select kids?
That's exactly what I think people in Boulder have figured out, that Deion isn't about the University of Colorado and that Deion's not about the Buffaloes, and there's no real connection to the community. That's when, and again, I know the weather was rough. That's part of the explanation. But the other part is just like people can see the fraudulence of Deion, that Deion is about Deion, and his daughter just transferred out. She was a walk-on on the basketball team. She's now going to Alabama A&M University. She hit the portal, or she's going somewhere. She's leaving there. She hit the portal. So there's one foot out the door. Shedeur headed to the NFL draft. Shiloh headed to the NFL draft. Travis Hunter headed to the NFL draft. Why would anybody think Deion is sticking around? And he hasn't done the foundational work. He's done the surface level. He was on the field shouting out this 99-year-old fan, and pretend like he's got some great relationship with her. But that's all surface level stuff. And so I just see a community that has been like, nice little gimmick, but all this crap that Deion, all the rappers and all the stuff that will never be reported until Deion leaves. And that's what I can't wait for, is when the stories get told after Deion leaves about the things that have really gone on in Boulder, Colorado with those Buffalo players and the environment Deion has set up, that sense of entitlement and the celebrity. Wait till we hear those stories. I bet you the people in that community have gotten an up-close look at Deion and his mentality and how it pervades the rest of that team, and they just don't like it. Everybody rolling around in gold chains with a sense of entitlement, not good.
Jason, when you look at the players who have left, Cormani McClain, who I'm very familiar with, that to me was not an indictment on Deion or the program. I think that young man never should have been at Colorado, went to school there for all the wrong reasons, and he needs to grow up and mature and to be able to salvage a career. But it just didn't work out. I actually don't blame both parties for breaking apart. The Dylan Edwards transfer surprised me, Jason. That's one of those ones where you're like, Now, Dylan Edwards had a long-standing relationship with Deion. I mean, this was not just a player recruit. This is something that goes back before they ever hit Boulder. And he was a very good player. A little scat back. He's not an every down back, but he gets the ball a lot. Had a great opening game against TCU. And he is a player that can be very effective in a rotational situation in a modern-day spread offense. And I thought he was one of the pillars. Like, again, he may not be Shedeur, he's not Shiloh, he's not Travis, but I'm thinking this is one of the important pieces. He just left, and then it turns out he goes to a Big 12 rival. That one right there has me thinking, I would love to pick that young man's head one day and say, why did you really leave? See, these are the stories we're going to find out, I think, in about, 2-3 years, Jason?
Yeah, it may be as early as next year, or it could be midway through this season. Because I'm telling you, that second loss could be problematic. And if it happens too early and they're eliminated from playoff contention, and if they're 4-2 for some reason, or 3-2 for some reason, I think then it becomes very chaotic, and all the stories start coming out, and all the finger pointing goes on, and because Deion's gonna point the finger at the kids, and eventually them kids' parents and other people, and all the media that has dealt with Deion and his sunglasses and his hoodie and his arrogance and all his phoniness are gonna be like, okay, well, let's get our pound of flesh before he scurries out of town and following his son somewhere. It's gonna get ugly and very interesting. I can't wait.
Yeah, I know. I know. Trust me. I know.
Steve, that's it and that's all for us. Thank you so much. Great job as always. We'll play tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my system, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.